Welcome, everyone. The event is now live. John, please take it away.
Thanks, Victoria. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of our ongoing editorial webinar series, Coffee Talk. Each hour-long information-packed episode organized by the hardworking folks at Redmond Magazine features the observations and insights of independent experts on a wide range of tech industry topics. Many thanks to the underwriting sponsor of this episode, Red Canary, a pioneer of managed detection and response to secure your endpoints, cloud, and whatever comes next. Without their support, this series would not be possible. And thanks to you for joining us. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief of the Converge 360 Group of 1105 Media, and I'll be your moderator for today's crash course in modern strategies for email security. And our lead presenter is technologist, creator of compelling content, and senior resultant, Howard M. Cohen. But before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. This episode is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. We'll make some time during the talk for some questions. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Our sponsor has provided some extra resources you won't want to miss. They're available now on your console. And as a small thank you to the first 200 attendees who stick with us to the end, we'll be sending you a $5 gift certificate to Starbucks. It's a cup of joe to go with the info. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about our lead presenter. Howard M. Cohen has spent more than 40 years in the IT industry. During that time, he has held senior executive positions in many of the top channel partner organizations, and he currently writes for and about IT and the IT channel. He is a sought-after speaker, an insightful observer of the ever-shifting technology landscape, and one of our favorite presenters. You guys are in for an awesome session. Take it away, Howard.
Thank you so much, John. And hi, everybody. We're here for a crash course, so I hope everybody has their helmets on. As many of you know, if you've been to any of my presentations in the past, that I like to start every presentation with a word of the day. And today's word is unusually simple. It's a very simple little word that we all love to hear and sometimes don't exactly love to say, but the word is yes. Yes, the word is yes. And why? Why is the word yes when we're talking about modern strategies for email security? Well, some of you may recognize this. The International Standards Organization has an Open Systems Interconnect model, which means it's the ISO OSI model. That's kind of a palindrome. Many people refer to it as the 7-layer network model, or the 7-layer model of internetworking, because it has 7 layers. And it basically describes the way data moves through a network. So an application is dealing with the data, it's running on a presentation layer, and the user has a session on the network that allows them to transport data across the network, and every device is attached to the network using a data link that connects it to the physical media of the network, which may be a copper cable, fiber optics, might even be wireless technology. But this is generally a very good framework to use for discussing various network issues, protocols, topics like that. Often, when I present this, the first question I get is, wait a minute, that's not complete. Where's the security layer? And you know what? It's a very good question because, yes, security is so important in networking. You'd think there would be a security layer. But here's where the word of the day comes in. Whenever anybody asks me, where's the security layer? My simple answer is yes. Security exists at every layer. Every layer has to be secure. Honestly, this is why security is considered to be a very difficult thing to manage. It has to be managed at 7 different levels, 7 different layers. It's also why you've probably heard network engineers talk about multi-layer security, because security has to be there at every layer. And this is why we're going to talk today about having a multi-layered email security strategy. Okay, so where this begins is with the concept that security is a chain, right? It's a good image for security, a nice, solid chain that keeps everything in, keeps everything out. Really, really good. And every layer in the model can be considered a link in this chain. And I'm sure you've already heard many times that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? I mean, if you pull on a chain, the weakest link is the first one that's going to open up. And so our job is to provide very strong security at every layer so that even the weakest link is so strong that the chain is almost never, ever broken. Okay, so let's focus in on the links that happen in the chain of security. And the first link in the chain, well, let's begin at the very beginning. And many of you are very familiar with my sizzling bacon slide, which is there to denote data. Why? Because everybody loves bacon. The only thing better than bacon is more bacon. And everybody loves data. The only thing better than data is more data. And that's why we generate yottabytes of data every day. But the data is what it's all about. The idea of a network is to move data from place to place so it can be used to do the things it needs to do. So we're going to continue tracking the data through all of its iterations, all of its movements throughout the network. But one very important rule of data is that data must always be encrypted. Always. You have to maintain encryption of the data at all times. And to further describe that, data exists in basically three fundamental states. At one state, it's at rest, meaning it's in a storage device just sitting there doing nothing. So it's data at rest in storage. Now, data only makes money in motion, so we've got to get that data going from somewhere, and therefore we bring it into transit. And so it's going from one place to another place to another place to another place. And in between, it gets used by somebody. Well, so we know that data at rest has to be kept encrypted. No question. We also know that we're using virtual private networks and IPsec and firewall. All kinds of devices are there to help us make sure that the data remains encrypted during transit. And only when it's in use does it ever really become unencrypted. So the bottom line here is when a cyber criminal gets their hands on encrypted data, there's absolutely nothing they can do with it because they don't have the key. They don't know how to unscramble it. So they've got gobbledygook. I love saying gobbledygook. Okay, so that's the major rule of data. Data must be kept encrypted at all times, especially true when we're talking about email data. Has to be kept encrypted in storage, in transit. Another very, very effective protection technique is data backup. Now, some people question, how can data backup be a security issue? And very simply, we mentioned a moment ago that you have to keep data encrypted. Well, when somebody runs ransomware on you, one of the things they may do is encrypt your data. They may encrypt your data, and they won't give you the key. So now you can't unencrypt it. Therefore, your data is useless. Very powerful. That's why ransomware is so popular. It renders the data useless. Now, if you pay the ransom, yeah, they'll give you the key. You can get your data back, but sometime after that, they may attack you again. So, the best protection against that kind of victimization is to have as current a backup copy nearby as you possibly can. The more current, the less data you lose in the event of a disaster. So when they come in and they encrypt your data, you can't get it anymore. You simply replace it with your last known good backup. And you do that very quickly. and you figure out how to lock the doors that they got in through to make sure they don't come back in again. So data backup is considered to be a very powerful way to protect your email and all of your other data. And good data backup, effective data backup, usually follows what we affectionately refer to as the 3-2-1 rule. 3, you should be maintaining 3 copies of your data at all times. 2, those copies, those copies should be kept on at least 2 different kinds of media. Doesn't matter what they are, as long as they're effective, but you should not keep them all, for example, on disks. You mix it up: disk, tape, virtual storage, offline storage, solid state storage. Whatever you choose, there should be at least 2 different kinds of media, and at least one copy should be kept somewhere other than your data center. It should be kept off-site. I joke about the Ford Transport Access Method, FTAM. Have somebody come pick up a copy every day and take it elsewhere. Crucial. But the 3-2-1 framework is a very good guideline for knowing whether or not you're really seriously protecting your data. Now, as we said, data must be encrypted when it's at rest in storage. And here you have your classic Winchester Technology hard drive. And it could be any kind of drive, but the data must be encrypted when it's on it. From the storage, it usually moves to servers, which allow it to be processed and handled and prepared for transportation. It's usually processed and handled using applications. And again, those servers have got to be protected. Your applications need to have their own levels of protection. What is currently protecting your email server? It's a very good question. If it's on premises, you should know the answer, or somebody who works with you should know the answer. And even if it's in the cloud, you want to be doing something more than just what the cloud is doing. Yeah, it's great to say, well, that's from this big company. They've got it backed up. They've got it protected. Unfortunately, if that data is lost, whose job is on the line? So you've got to make sure that you're putting a belt around that in addition to their suspenders. You've got to have your own provisions in place to complement what your vendors are doing for you. Okay, so now we've processed our data. It's coming out of our server and we're ready to send it somewhere. The very next stop it has to go through are our routers. And the first decision a router makes is this going out into the wild woolly world, or is it staying here inside our own premises? And if indeed it's staying inside, great, it passes it along the rest of the local area network to where it's supposed to get to. Otherwise, it routes it out to the world, and we'll be getting to the next steps in a moment, but it tells it exactly where to go and exactly how to get there. It does that in concert with domain name servers all over the world. Amazing, amazing technology. Okay, while we're going through the router, another step we want to take is to make sure that there are no viruses. There's no worms, no Trojans, or other horrible sounding things lurking in our data. This is especially true of data that's coming back into our network. We don't want inbound data to bring viruses and malware in, but by the same token, we don't want to be guilty of sending viruses or malware out. And so antivirus, anti-malware, all those technologies are critical and crucial. And so we make sure that they're clean and free of viruses and malware. Now, finally, we get to where I think a lot of people expected us to get to. We get to the firewall. And firewall is a very simple device. For a lot of people, they think that the firewall is the sum total of their security. If you ask them if they have security, they'll tell you, oh, yeah, we got a firewall. We're good. And of course, they're wrong. But the firewall does play an important part. It's a filter. It decides what traffic gets into and out of your local network. And so your entire local network is behind your firewall. And the router sends data, sends content to the firewall, and the firewall decides whether or not it's valid to go out. And if it is, it goes out into the wider area network, which can include the internet. Similarly, and more importantly in many cases, when data is coming back in, that filter is very powerful and very important, and it obeys rules that make sure that things that should not go through don't. Okay, so the firewall is an important step, but let us remember, it is not the only step. Another step along the path, and again, this is to some extent more inbound than outbound, but network access control. So network access control fundamentally has two and maybe three fundamental purposes. Fundamental purpose number one is to make sure that the user who is trying to access the network is who they say they are and can prove it. Also, the device that they're using to connect to the network can prove that it is who it says it is, and that it is properly configured and adequately secured to be allowed to connect to the network. Now, the other thing that network access control does, it'll give you lots of internal addresses that you can use that the outside world never sees. So you may have seen addresses for your devices that say 192.168.0. Pick a number, 17. That is the same kind of number that's used behind every network access control device on every local area network. It's a pool that's been set aside just for that function. Nobody outside ever sees it. Therefore, we preserve the number of IP addresses that are in use at any time. We ran out of IP addresses, official IP addresses, long ago, but that was before we were supposed to change to the new version, which is called IPv6 from IPv4. Now, of course, we were supposed to be finished with that in 2011, April of 2011, so we're a little late. Anyway, network access control provides those functions and makes sure that everybody is who and what they say they are. A part of that we see all the time is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication has always combined something you have with something you know. The something that you have is, in this case, your smartphone. Used to be a little key fob. The something you know is your password. So you give it your password, and then your system will transmit a 6-digit code to you that it just generated just now. You get that code, you enter that along with the password that you know, and you're allowed to get onto the network. Microsoft says this is going to lead to the death of the password, which, as far as I'm concerned, would be very welcome, because passwords are what make us most vulnerable. You know, the idea of credential theft, that is what causes more exploits, more cybercrimes than anything else. People steal each other's passwords. That's because people write their passwords on a sticky note and stick it under the keyboard where nobody will ever find it. Ridiculous. And that's a bad habit. There are many other bad habits. People use weak passwords. People use simply the word password. We need to get rid of passwords and use multi-factor authentication that does not include them. And this technique is among some very good ones. Biometrics like fingerprint or retina scan, face recognition, those will probably get better and better. There's been typing cadence. It measures how you type your password. Interesting. But we will see advances, more and more advances in multi-factor authentication as we go forward, and you won't be able to email without them. The last piece along the network trail before we get out into the field is the is the intrusion prevention system. Now, I tell people that the intrusion prevention system was clearly invented in the Bronx. That's because I come from the Bronx, and our reputation is that we're always looking for trouble. Those guys are looking for trouble. Well, intrusion prevention systems are there to look for trouble. They look at the internet, they look at what's coming in traffic toward your network, and they determine whether or not anything looks suspicious or looks like it might be dangerous. And if they find anything like that, they evaluate it and determine whether or not it needs to be handled. And if so, they handle it. We won't go into more detail about how they handle it, you know? Okay, so you get the idea. This is a system that's looking for things before they get to your network. And if they find them, that's a very good thing, because you don't want them to reach your network. Finally, we emerge into the wild and woolly internet. We're out there, okay? And the internet, of course, is a global network of nodes that are all connected to copper, fiber optics, wireless technologies. So huge we can't diagram it. But it is now the way in which we transport data between locations almost all the time. Now we get out to the other end and we reach endpoints. So now, you know, your endpoint could be your smartphone. That's a very popular endpoint. It could be your desktop computer. People still have those. On the right-hand side there, we have the laptop that thinks it's a tablet, or maybe the tablet that thinks it's a laptop. Whichever one it is, that's a valid endpoint. Many people are accessing the internet over these and getting connected to people's networks. But servers and peripherals like printers and so forth, those can all be considered endpoints as well. And of course, because they're kind of like the doors or the windows into your house, right? Where do you put protection? You put the most protection on your doors and your windows, because those are the points of entry. Those are the logical places where people may or may not get into your location, your house, or your office, or your factory, or what have you. Well, the same is true here. We do a lot to properly secure our endpoints. And there are many, many choices in all these cases. But it's got to be there. First of all, it shouldn't pass NAC, network access control, if it's not there. But even the endpoints are not nearly as vulnerable as the next step. Because in the next step, we get to your greatest challenge. This is indeed your greatest challenge. Have any of you ever encountered this error message? Clueless user detected. Problem exists between keyboard and chair. Okay. This has actually been reduced to an acronym, PEPCAC. Problem exists between keyboard and chair. And if you ask any professional systems or network engineer, they will tell you that that is by far the most vulnerable segment of any network and the hardest one for them to manage. If it hasn't registered yet, what I'm talking about is this guy, your end user, okay? I'm not saying that your end user is a bad guy. He looks a little puzzled, a little confused. But he is definitely human. And he changes his link into a hook because he's really easy to hook. And that's why phishing remains so prevalent. They fish for humans. And they're using a technique that's often called human engineering. Other people like to call it social engineering. To me, social suggests a group or a community. I like human engineering because it says we're targeting the person. Why are we targeting the person? Because he's fallible. People are fallible. They make mistakes. They do things wrong. They don't respond to the same stimulus the same way every time, like a digital device does. Okay, so since well, how do they fail? One thing, they're easily distracted. A a staff member of the opposite gender may pass by this guy's desk, and all of a sudden he completely loses concentration on what he was doing, and he can't figure out, where was I? What was I doing? What was I up to? And he makes mistakes. Or maybe before he came in, he had a fight with somebody, and he brought his bad mood to work with him. Happens every day. And so, in a bad mood, he's distracted, he's not thinking, he makes mistakes. This means that people are undoubtedly inconsistent. Nobody is perfectly consistent all the time. Unlike digital devices, which pretty much are. I mean, they'll do the same thing the same way every time if you ask them to do the same thing. And that's what's wonderful about them. But because they're inconsistent, they're unpredictable. We don't know what to expect from our humans. And so we know that they're pretty easily fooled. This is why phishing is so powerful, because end users are very easily fooled. And as a matter of fact, recent stats tell us 3/4 of breaches, all breaches, involve a human element. People are at least partly at fault for every open door that lets cyber criminals in. How do we fight this? How do we fight against that phishing email that comes in, looks like it's genuine, looks like it comes from your bank, or perhaps your vendor, or perhaps your own company? Looks like it comes from somebody you know, and it invites you to click a link or to open up some kind of attachment. And yeah, sure, why not? Why not? Because it could open the door to disaster. What if that email is not from who it says it comes from? And this is why we talk so much about business email compromise, a nice official way to talk about the things that can happen when people encounter phishing email, which sounds a little silly. Okay, so we have to teach them to recognize when somebody's trying to fool them. It's not that easy. First and foremost, this has to become a culture issue. It has to become part of the fabric of what your company is. So they have to see it being practiced by the CEO down to the janitor. Everybody has to practice great care to preserve protection from business email compromise. Everybody has to be aware that the potential consequences of being attacked with a business email compromise is dire for them, not just for the company. It can drive the company out of business, in which case they will be out of a job. So that's dire, okay? It's got to be cultural. It's got to be part of the fabric of how everybody operates in the company. This one I should have done in much bigger typeface, much bolder, and make it jump off the screen. You must provide SAT, security awareness training. You can train people to be much better at recognizing emails that are in disguise, that don't come from where they say they come from. That can be trained. And since it's obviously changing all the time, you need to keep them up to date on the newest ways in which people are trying to change them. No matter what, you've got to constantly be refreshing this. People become complacent. They figure, I've been catching it. I haven't had a problem. All is good. Wrong. You've got to have constant refreshers, constant reminders. And some of them have got to be painful. But we'll get back to that. We talked earlier about MFA, but MFA right now by itself just isn't enough. You need to require strong passwords. I said that people are using the word password as their password. They're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's just not hard to crack. You need to combine special characters, capital letters, lowercase letters, and numbers at least 12 of them. And you need to make sure that people change them on a frequent enough basis so that if anybody steals them, they'll probably end up useless to them. People don't do this just for fun. This is critical because if people can get into your email, they can get into your business. As a general cultural element, you want to discourage people from clicking links or opening attachments automatically. They see a link, they click it. They see an attachment, they open it. That's got to change. They've got to look at it with suspicion. They've got to look at it and say, well, that might not be what it says it is. So, for example, if Netflix sends you a notice that your credit card expired, that's a popular scam. Don't click the link. Instead, go to your browser and go to Netflix.com directly yourself. Check your account and see if your credit card has expired. Don't be surprised if it hasn't. You just avoided a phishing email. Congratulations. So make sure everybody's aware of that all the time. From a general rule of thumb, keep your patching current. Don't let patches just sit and languish. Vendors send them out quick when they discover a weakness or a problem, especially security patches. Evaluate them quickly and deploy them as you see fit. Unfortunately, it's unpatched systems let people through more than almost anything else. Now, let me not leave without saying that there are tools available to you that will help you fight email attacks, and you should look at them very carefully, evaluate them very thoroughly. But perhaps your best tool is, hey, go fishing. Put on your funny hat, break out your rod and reel, and get out there and send some phishing emails to your own people. And make sure that the ones who fall for it are summoned to your office very publicly, very, very obviously, so people know about it, and what they hear sounds terrible. You know, the crime of being caught in a phishing email. You don't want to do that. And with that, we're going to hear from someone who knows a lot more about the solutions to all of these challenges. But first, my good friend John's going to come back and let me know if we have any questions for me.
Thanks, Howard. Yeah, we do. We've got a few. I want to remind everyone that you can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Let's start with this question from Vic, who's wondering, I've heard Microsoft is eliminating passwords. How can they do that? And what will protect us instead?
Okay, Vic, you may have shown up late. We did cover that, and I was surprised when I first saw it. But I think it's important to focus on. You know, passwords are the most vulnerable thing. I mean, even if you do a strong password, people have problems remembering their passwords. I know people who have a little notebook that they carry with them everywhere they go, and they scribble all their passwords in it. Now, that's great, except it becomes a mess. But also, I mean, what if they lose it? What if somebody steals it? Other people put their passwords in their contacts. What if somebody managed their way into their contacts? Now they have access to all that person's different passwords. And of course, many still scribble them on sticky notes and put them under their keyboard, which is not fooling anybody anymore. You know, and worse, they put them on their monitor. They put them somewhere where they can see them and where others can see them too. Make no mistake, a major proportion of cyber crimes are committed by people inside your organization, not all coming from the outside. So somebody who shares an office with you may be looking to steal your credentials. And that's why passwords are just such a danger. If we can combine a 6-digit code on your phone with your fingerprint or your facial recognition or something else, that's better than combining it with your password. And so I don't know why Microsoft is taking so long. I know this was announced a couple of years ago, but hopefully they'll succeed with it soon, and we won't see people having to figure out what to do with their passwords. Hope that helps.
Okay, we've got one from Walter is wondering, is phishing the only good example of social engineering, or what you call human engineering? What else should we be watching for?
Okay, so phishing, there's a lot of different forms of phishing now. There is, for example, vishing, where people use the phone to fake somebody out. Maybe they call your human resources department and say, hey, I lost my password. Can you please, update my password? And they convince the person in HR to do it for them. And now they're into your account. That's one good example. Smishing. I feel silly even saying that. Smishing, where they send you a text message and convince you to click something that you really shouldn't click. There's, how do they pronounce it? Crishing, in which they send you a QR code to scan. And for some reason, people still find it novel to scan QR codes. And so they'll do it. And that opens the door to disaster. There are many ways in which people can be fooled into giving you access to their networks. One of my favorites amongst them, honestly, between you and me, is stupidity. Rank stupidity. I know of a major client who manufactures something that is so dangerous that it is regulated by the government. And their policy is to issue admin rights to everybody on their network. Now, I challenge anybody to explain to me why that isn't just plumb stupid, loco, crazy. How do they get away with it? But that actually exists. And so, people make it all too terribly easy for cyber criminals to get at what they want to get at. And we got to watch out for it. We all have to protect each other. And so if you see something that you just think is stupid happening in your company, speak up. If they don't appreciate that you're trying to protect the company, find another company. Anyway.
Okay, here's one from Tori who's wondering, would you recommend sticking to an on-prem email server to improve security?
Okay, categorically, I would not recommend sticking to an on-prem anything. At this point, given the amazing investments that have been made and the amazing developments that have happened in cloud security, you can't tell me that you feel safer with your data inside your own four walls. That just doesn't exist anymore. It's an anachronism. It's in the past. And so, no, it's easier to break into your on-premises email server than it is to break into just about any cloud-based email server. They can spend more on security than you can, usually. So, no, I don't think that improves your posture at all. I think that you need to be realistic. You need to choose a cloud service that you can feel confident with, not one that exists in somebody's closet somewhere, not one that has some kind of spacey kind of name, but rather a reliable, well-known business that makes the investments in security. And then what you need to do is not trust them. Adopt a zero trust approach, zero trust attitude. I don't trust you. I know that you replicate my email server in 3 different countries and now on the moon. I think that's great, but it's not enough for me. So I'm going to add my own layer of security in addition. Do it. Because as I said before, if by chance if the moon blows up and all of their data centers lose your data, if you haven't protected it, it's your job that's going to be on the line, not theirs. They have bigger problems, really. Use reliable, but don't trust it. It sounds crazy, but that's where we are.
Okay, so Robert, sort of following up, wondering, when a user keeps committing the same mistakes, how severe should the penalties be?
Oh boy, when they keep committing this, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You see, repeat offenders. First of all, if your company doesn't have a stated policy about that, an acceptable use policy that indicates that they have to follow all of the rules and regs laid down in your IT policies and procedures manual, then shame on your company. That needs to be there. And I think there are a lot of companies out there, a lot of consultants, even a lot of IT companies that are making a fortune helping companies write effective policies. You know what? That's worth the investment for just this reason. Have somebody who's been there and done that help you develop a policy that contains all of the things you need in your policy, including the fact that you've got to play by the rules. Destroying a smoke detector in an airplane lavatory is against federal law. Well, making the same mistake twice on our network is a misdemeanor. The third time, it's an offense of the fourth time you're fired. The rules have got to be stated that every employee has to sign off on it, and you have to expect that senior management will do it. They will fire. Even the best salesman in your company isn't immune from being terminated if they just don't follow the rules and help protect the business like everybody else. I think it's fair, don't you?
Okay, Howard, I think that's all the time we have for questions for you. There are a few left over. Maybe we'll shoot you those in an email. Folks, it looks like that's all the time we have for this episode of Coffee Talk. Many thanks to Howard M. Cohen for an insightful presentation, and a special thanks to Red Canary for sponsoring us. We couldn't have done it without them. Keep an eye out for our next episode and for your Starbucks gift card. It should be coming your way in the next few days. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.